Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it. Ethan began to regain consciousness and couldn't figure out if he was in this world or the next. There was something in his mouth that made it difficult to swallow. His eyes felt like they were filled with sand, and his eyelids were so heavy they could barely open. The bright light hit his eyes. Everything around was white. The man thought, maybe I've already died and am in heaven. If everything was so white all around. And it's so quiet, but then why can't I wake up? My head feels like it's cast iron. I can't feel my body at all. Suddenly he saw a young girl leaning over him and asking him something. How do you feel? Can you hear me? Blink if you can. Ethan managed not only to blink, but to mumble something like yes. Then the girl called someone and people started hustling around him, pulling the hateful tube out of his mouth and turning off some sensors that were all over his body. The man exhaled a sigh of relief. Phew. So I'm alive. A gray-haired doctor in a funny hat came in, examined the patient, and smiled. Well, Ethan, everything's going according to plan. You're awake now. The operation was more than successful, even though it lasted 6 hours. There was a lot of apprehension. In such cases, the risk of rejection of another organ is very high, but you were incredibly lucky. The donor's heart took root in your body like one of your own. I can't even believe such a success. Consider that today is your second birthday. Now you will live another 100 years. The man smiled weakly. Thank you, Gail Murchoff. It's all your hands of gold. A low bow to the man who gave me his flaming motor. And who is he, tell me? It's very important to me. It's very important to me. His noble deed is hard to overestimate. The doctor immediately frowned. Unfortunately, I am not at liberty to divulge such confidential information. And don't ask me such questions again. It's unethical. Be glad that you survived. Now everything will go well. You still have a period of rehabilitation. But in the meantime, rest. I'll check in on you later. Ethan sighed and leaned back on the pillows. He put his hand on his chest and listened. A pounding, 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 like it was his own. But was it someone else's? Or was it mine now? There was an incomprehensible and some uneasy feeling inside, because he was alive now, and someone had died, and a part of that person was now in him. I wondered, Ethan thought, would my character change now, or maybe new habits would emerge? And my donor? Is he a man or a woman? How old was he? How had he lived? He's not a stranger to me now, after all. Suddenly the man remembered Susan, and tears came to his eyes. He missed his 6-year-old daughter terribly, unbearably, even though he knew that she was with her grandmother, in good hands, but he still longed for her. So I wanted to cling to my little girl, breathe the scent of childhood, and kiss my favorite fragrant cheeks. Involuntarily, the memories of her youth came flooding back to her, and her whole life flashed before her eyes. Ethan grew up in a wealthy family. His father had his own shoe repair shop, a small but steady income, and his mother had her own grocery store. Ethan grew up well off, having the best of everything, since he was the only and late child in the family. He was shaken and dusted. After high school, he graduated from university and went into the shoe business just like his father, only not repairing, but selling. He did not pursue quantity, but quality. Everyone in town knew that his stores had excellent shoes, and even with a guarantee. Slowly things began to happen because to start his father gave his beloved son his savings. Soon Ethan married a lovely girl, Valerie. She was a newcomer from a simple village family. Her parents did not object at all to such a daughter-in-law, for they were from the people. On the contrary, they were glad. It meant she would be a good mother and hostess. The girl was thin as a stalk, and she impressed the lad with her tender smile and large, sad gray eyes. The newlyweds lived well, almost never fought. Valerie tried to please Ethan in everything, was an ideal wife and hostess. The only thing was that she was sick a lot and often. It is worth a breeze, already a cold, only we're a draft, problems with the kidneys. Years passed, and the couple could not have a baby. Doctors advised Valerie not to have a baby with her precarious health, and Ethan loved her, pitied her, and did not insist. He found out about his wife's pregnancy when it was already a very long time. 4 months. Valerie deliberately hid it from everyone. She knew they would persuade him to stop. And she wanted so badly to become a mommy, to finally kiss her cheeks, to cradle her baby and give her all her love. When his wife was taken to the hospital, Ethan couldn't find peace. He had an uneasy, oppressive feeling that kept him awake. He smoked one cigarette after another and paced the hospital corridor, praying as best he could. The news, he was told 9 hours later, killed him. Valerie died on the operating table without regaining consciousness, and his daughter was miraculously saved. It seemed that life was over at that moment and everything faded away. Ethan grieved terribly but did not doubt for a moment whether he could cope with his daughter or not. It was a matter of honor, his little girl, his blood. Fortunately, Susan was calm, not capricious, as if she understood that it was hard enough for her father. Valerie's mother, Catherine Scott, had helped him in the beginning. She came from the village for a month and taught her son-in-law all the tricks of infant care, and then she came at the first call to help. A good woman, that's for sure. Susan is now 6 years old. Ethan himself had been complaining about his heart for years. It would stiffen, it would clench, it would flutter as if it were going to stop. The man had shortness of breath. It became difficult to do basic household chores. One day, he got absolutely sick and was taken by ambulance to the hospital. There, after examination, it turned out that he had inoperable heart complications and urgent need for a heart transplant. But it is one thing to say and one thing to do. The search for a suitable donor often lasted for months or even years, and many died before the operation, and no amount of money in the world could help. Not only that, but business also required attention, and Ethan could not concentrate on the treatment. So he dragged on, as they say, until the last moment. A month ago, he was hospitalized again. He called Catherine Scott, who rushed over and took Susan to her house in the village, since he had no one to leave his daughter with. Ethan was getting worse and worse. The IVs and supportive medications were no longer saving him, and suddenly a truly miraculous thing happened. He was told that a donor had been found who matched his parameters, and he was being prepared for an emergency surgery. And now he has come to his senses. He will live. Everything is still ahead of him. And that man will never open his eyes again. And only his heart is pounding and pounding, as if reminding him of it all the time. When Ethan was discharged, he went to the head doctor again and tried to find out the identity of the donor. But he was refused and scolded, saying, "Why are you forcing us to commit a crime? It is not supposed to disclose, and that's it." But still the idea was firmly lodged in the man's mind, and did not let him rest day or night. The first thing Ethan did when he arrived at his mansion was to call Catherine Scott, make sure his daughter was all right, and speak to her at length on the phone. The girl was anxious to go home. "Daddy, it's so good that you've recovered. When are you coming to get me? I missed you so much, and I want to go home. At Grandma's is good, of course, but home is still better." The man could hardly hold back tears and coaxed his daughter. "Have a little more patience, my little girl. Listen to Grandma Catherine. Help her with the household. I'll get a little better, and then I'll come and get you. All right. I miss you too, kitten." Next came the calls from work. While Ethan was sick, his deputy, C.N. Smith, was running the firm. He was a good professional, no doubt, but not much of a man. The lead buyer, Alex, began to tell the chief what had been going on in his absence. "I'm glad you're feeling better, Ethan Parker. I'm looking forward to seeing you back at the helm. Smith and I are sure to go down soon, and my gut has never let me down before. Ethan became alarmed. What happened? We just talked to the deputy yesterday. He didn't tell me anything like that. Alex hesitated. I don't like to knock, but here's the thing. Sean Smith almost made a deal twice already to buy substandard Chinese material at a bargain price. He wanted it to look like premium leather. It's a good thing I didn't sign anything in time, or we'd have gone broke for sure. And I ran into him the other day in a cafe. He was talking to Whitson. Remember him? Our main competitor from the shoe company. What could possibly connect them? That can't be good. You go ahead and get well, and I'll keep my ears open. Ethan was taken aback. It's really weird. Cian didn't tell me anything about that. Thanks for the warning. I'm counting on you, Alex. I trust you. All right. We'll be in touch. The next day, Ethan decided to take a leisurely walk in the park. The doctor said he needed to walk to get his heart used to the exertion. He watched the fallen leaves rustle under his feet, so cheerful and colorful, the breeze rustling, and enjoyed the walk. Suddenly, a little boy about 7 years old ran up to him. He was so cute in his blue overalls and his hat he looked like he was not from a wealthy family. But he was clean cut, and his eyes were laughing with a twinkle. The child held out a note to the man and shouted, "It will help you learn the truth." And he dashed off into the bushes, his heels blazing. Ethan didn't understand, so he unfolded the crumpled notebook. The address was written there. 6 Pottlesnea Street, red fence. And that was it. No one from whom or to whom it was addressed was not clear. But for some reason the little boy seemed to Ethan like someone very much, and whom he himself did not understand. His heart began to beat faster, and the man, overcoming weakness, went to the address, not sure why he was going there. The house was small but well-maintained, and a dog barked in the yard. The man knocked on the gate. He was terribly uncomfortable. What was he going to say now? That the boy in the park had given him this address. It's funny, isn't it? The door was opened by a plump, ruddy, older woman with a neat, short haircut. Ethan began to explain confusedly. "Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Parker." I was wondering. But the woman didn't let him finish. Her eyes moistened. She grasped his hand and hurriedly led him into the house. "Hello, Ethan, my son. You came? I wondered if you'd show up or not." Ethan just sat back in his chair, like a stump, unable to understand anything. "Woman, are you delusional? What son am I to you? I know and remember my parents. They are dead, but you have nothing to do with them. What are you talking about? I should probably go. I must have the wrong address. I'm sorry." What a madhouse. But the woman suddenly cried, "Wait a minute. Listen to me, I beg you. Your own brother gave you his heart, whether you realize it or not, and he died 3 weeks ago. Here's a picture of him, my Eddie, and I'm really your mother. My name is Margaret. I gave birth to you and him too. You're twins, you know?" Ethan only blinked frequently. Not really, to be honest. I grew up in the Parker family. They had a store and a shoe shop, and now I'm a businessman myself. I also do shoes. I lived with them, growing up, as long as I can remember. There are pictures of my mother holding me as a baby. How is that possible? The woman cried again and began to tell the story. "You see, son, I myself am an orphan. I was brought up in an orphanage. No family, no one in the world. After I left the orphanage, I went to work at a construction site as a house painter. I lived in a dormitory. So we hired a rich guy to build an apartment. His name was Mark, young and handsome. He looked at me like that, just burned right through. And I was young and inexperienced, so I fell in love with him with no memory. He lured me with sweet speeches and flowers and candy and seduced me. And then it was just like in the TV series. I am pregnant, and he immediately pretended that he had nothing to do and did not know me. What am I to him? A workforce, not his equal. I was pregnant until the last hiding. At the construction site ran, bags of cement lifted, and even with twins, Where would I go with two in a dormitory? They would have kicked me out at once, and I couldn't handle two kids by myself. I cried and cried. I didn't know what to do. I had to reach for the rope. And then a friend advised me to turn to these businessmen, Parker. They are childless. Everyone knew it, very much wanted a baby. So I fell at their feet, told them everything as it is. They agreed to take the baby. They chose you. They had a lot of money. All the documents were drawn up quietly. And they took a receipt from me that I never, under any pretext, will not appear in their family and your life. They said, you gave the child up, and that's it. Forget about it. They gave me a lot of money. At least I bought Eddie everything he needed. A crib, a stroller, baby stuff. That's how you ended up with them. Ethan, I gave you up myself with my own hands to strangers. Then I remembered you often, I cried. My life was getting better. I got well married in a year. But what the hell? It was too late to be sorry. So you and your brother lived apart, not knowing each other. I didn't risk telling my husband the truth either, so he died without knowing. He loved Eddie like he was his own, never hurt him. My son was a good guy, kind, helpful, and simple. And if anyone was in trouble, he would always help out and help. He married a good girl and worked in a cab. 3 years ago, he decided that after his death, all of his organs could be used as donor organs, because he felt. 3 weeks ago, my little boy crashed to his death. He lost control of his car. He was very tired, fell asleep at the wheel. I still can't believe it. I keep waiting for the door to open and Eddie to yell like he always does. Hi, Mommy, I'm home. And the woman wept bitterly with longing and grief. I'm sorry. It's a terrible thing to lose a son. And that boy who slipped me the note in the park, who was he? Margaret sighed. This is my grandson, Matthew. It turns out he's your own nephew. Eddie's little boy. Now he's almost an orphan. I don't know how to tell him that. He keeps thinking Daddy's gone away and he'll be back soon. He keeps asking me questions like a knife through my heart. Ethan was taken aback again. Where's the baby's mother? Did Eddie have a wife? Margaret wept again. Sarah was such a good woman. She was an accountant in a firm. She always cared so much about her work. She often took reports home. She thought they would appreciate her efforts. Yeah, right. So she was set up by her dodgy boss, hung all the dogs, was charged with fraud, and given 5 years. Like she made a phony deal and pocketed all the money. Where's the money? It's a clean swindle. The son almost jumped on them in court. Everyone knows that Sarah's not capable of such a thing, and it is impossible to prove anything. So now she's imprisoned for nothing, and she is also very ill with tuberculosis. The doctors say it is a severe form. She will not live long. Some kind of evil fate came upon the son's family. Only misfortune and misfortune. And that bastard boss of hers is getting rich, riding around in expensive cars, changing mistresses in droves, and he doesn't care about anything. What a bastard the earth is like. So Eddie's been pulling 3 shifts, and he's been driving around at night like he's crazy. He wanted to get a good lawyer to help get Sarah out of jail, but he didn't have time. Ethan couldn't digest so much information at once. He asked head-on, "And how did you know who your son's heart was transplanted into?" "That's classified information. As I tried the chief doctor, he would not discuss it." The elderly woman replied, "I have a good friend at the hospital. She works in the surgical department. She was the one who helped me. I begged her both ways. She took pity on me. And when I read the name, I felt sick. It's unbelievable my brother gave his heart and saved his life without knowing it. So, what do you want from me?" "Money. I do not understand it. You yourself gave me up, and I'm sorry. I'm not ready to call you Mom. I was raised by another woman. and loved. After all these years, Margaret lowered her eye and cried, "I'm sorry, son. I guess you're right. Of course I shouldn't have done it. I promised I'd stay out of your life. We're strangers. I know we're strangers." I just felt so sorry for Matthew. I couldn't stand it. It's all happening all at once. His father's dead, his mother's dying in prison. I'm getting old. I'm afraid I won't have time to raise my grandson. So I thought that maybe you could help. He's no stranger to you. He's your nephew, after all. Sorry to have disturbed you. Goodbye, my son, and forgive me for everything. Ethan muttered. Why are you so quick? Forgive me for being rude. It just came out. Did I say I wouldn't help? I just need to think it over. You understand, I'm still in shock myself to find out in 1 second that my donor is my brother and his wife on the brink, and you're my mother. I'm going head over heels with it all. Give me some time to come to my senses and figure out how to proceed. I'll find out everything about Matthew's mother, and I'll let you know. Your son's heart beats in me, and I owe him eternal gratitude. So I won't give up. I'll help you. Don't hesitate. We're not strangers at all. I just haven't come to my senses yet. I can't get my head around it all at once. Ethan didn't sleep well. He dreamt about that little boy with the cheerful, mischievous eyes, my nephew. What was really going to happen to him now? The grandmother is of an age, and everything is unclear with the mother. I pity the boy. We must find out everything tomorrow, and not put it off for too long. It's amazing how abruptly life has changed after the operation. So many relatives showed up at once, and the mother, I can't get my head around it. But now I can see why the heart fit in so well, because it really is my own heart. Oh, Eddie. Thank you, brother. Ethan pulled all his connections and got Sarah's case reviewed. And he, despite his wild weakness, went to her firm and started asking around. He talked to the new accountant, to the secretary. Such people always know and see more than all the other employees. Paying a little money, Ethan managed to get reports and papers for the period when Sarah allegedly committed fraud. He took them to an handwriting expert who conducted an independent examination which found that Sarah's signature on those very documents was skillfully forged by someone. And the secretary said that a certain Sean Smith just at that time had made a big illegal deal, allegedly because of Sarah. They say he did not suspect anything, and the shrewd accountant started it all to make a profit. Ethan was shocked. This is his deputy. It turned out that he was simultaneously working on all fronts. Ethan wondered why Sean had such a fancy car of the latest model, and even had his own yacht. Even he could not afford it. Most of his profits went back into circulation. Ethan chose the investigator carefully, too. The most meticulous and incorruptible, and soon the whirlwind began to turn. The case was reviewed. Sarah was found innocent. All charges were dropped, and she was set free. But it was too late. Sarah was near death and was immediately transferred from the prison hospital to the intensive care unit. Though the best doctors took care of her, there was nothing that could be done. Tuberculosis had completely invaded the woman's lungs, and she was coughing up blood every half hour, barely getting up and running a fever. They wouldn't let Ethan see her because the disease was highly contagious, but they did give her a farewell note. Ethan brought it to Margaret. At least Matthew was in school. They sat down in the kitchen, unfolded it with shaking hands, and began to read. Ethan, I don't know you personally, but I heard that it was you who took the trouble and did the impossible, freeing me from prison. It's a pity it's too late, but all the same I am immensely grateful to you that my son will not grow up with the stigma of a convict mother. After all, it wasn't my fault. It was all Sean Smith. He supervised our firm and our director. It's one gang, and I was just a pawn and a bargaining chip in their dishonest game. I swear on my son's health, I didn't sign anything. I'm not crazy. It's all fake. I've said it 100 times in court, but it's like they didn't hear me. I wish those people could feel what I've been through in those cells. And you, Ethan, I beg you on my knees, I beseech you, I beseech you, I beseech you, don't leave your nephew and my son. My mother-in-law is a very good woman, but she's old now, and it will be very hard for her to raise her grandson alone. After all, my Eddie is gone too. One consolation, I'll see him there soon, in heaven. Bury me next to my husband. It's very important to me. Son Matthew, Mommy loves you very much, and you must always remember that. If I'm gone, listen to Grandma Margaret and Uncle Ethan. They're your closest and dearest, and I will watch over you from heaven with Daddy and keep you safe. Big hugs to you, my sweetest baby. They both sobbed, Margaret sobbing, and Ethan quietly swallowing his tears. He almost screamed, "Why is everything so unfair in life? And nothing can be done. Why does Matthew have to be without a mother who loves him madly? So does my daughter Susan. Why do children have to suffer so much?" Margaret asked quietly. "Do you have a daughter? You never mentioned her, son. Would you mind if we met her?" Ethan replied, "She's at Catherine's grandmother's, my mother-in-law, in the village, and I took her there when I was very sick. I'll have to pick her up soon. She's already longing for me. And my wife died in childbirth, so we live with our daughter alone. She is the dearest thing I have. Susan calls every day, chirping like a bell. So why should I be against communicating? Your family, no matter how you look at it." The very next day, Sarah died in the hospital. There was a funeral. Ethan took care of everything, and the woman was given a dignified burial. Margaret insisted that Matthew knew nothing about his mother's death, too. She felt sorry for her grandson, but Ethan was adamantly against it. He explained to the woman, "This is wrong. Give your son a chance to say goodbye to his mother. He must understand and accept it. Otherwise, he won't forgive me or you for this betrayal and lie. And he must be told about his father's death. I don't know how to do it, but you have to. After all, his parents will not come back and rise from the dead, and the child will live with false hopes. And can you imagine what it will be like for him to find out later that he was tricked, simply lied to his face? No, you can't do that." Ethan, softly as he could, quietly tried to explain what had happened. He said that his mom and dad were in heaven now, like angels, protecting him and loving him, only he couldn't see them. And he felt a lump in his throat, and his brother's heart was beating fast in his chest, as if to support him in this difficult conversation. Ethan promised the baby, "But you know, Matthew, I'm your own uncle, and Grandma Margaret. We'll always be there for you. You're not alone. We're together, you know. You've got to be a man. You've got to be a man. You've got to be strong. You've got to hold on. But right now, you cry, sit by Mommy's side. That's the way to do it. Then, when you grow up, you'll remember that sad moment as the most important moment of your life. I have a daughter, Susan. She too, like you, lost her mommy, and she misses her too. But we get through it together, and you will. Come here, nephew, let me give you a hug." The boy snuggled trustingly into Ethan's arms, and Ethan felt so warm inside, as if he were his own son. And Eddie's heart beating in his chest confirmed it again. Thump, thump, thump. The baby cried bitterly and sat quietly at his mother's coffin for a long time. He told her something, and she seemed to hear him. He asked his grandmother frightenedly, "Grandma, if I put up a high ladder and climb to the sky, will I never see Mommy and Daddy again?" "Never, never, never, never? Not even for 1 second?" Margaret sobbed and replied, "No, granddaughter, you can't see them. They're very high up on a cloud, looking at you." Ethan would not let the child go, and he knew for certain that he was going to take Matthew with him. He felt a tremendous responsibility for the boy's fate. He felt the same responsibility as he did for his own daughter. Now he had 2 children, period. A week after Sarah's funeral, Ethan arrived in the village to pick up his daughter. Susan, seeing her father, wanted to jump on his neck as was her habit. But Ethan groaned, put her in his arms, kissed her, hugged her and stroked her long curly locks. Susan looked like a mischievous boy in the village, in her ridiculous pants and oversized jacket, all messed up, but happy and tanned. The man even laughed. "Daughter, you look like a chimney sweep. Where is my little princess? Who's that little houseboy? Come on, let's get you cleaned up, washed and changed, and then we'll go. Catherine Scott, my dear, thank you for looking after me. How's Susan?" "She wasn't too much trouble. I'm sorry it took me so long to pick her up. But I was just a little weak after the operation. And everything came at once, such a whirlwind. I'm still dizzy." The older woman laughed. "Oh, come on, Ethan. My granddaughter makes me happy. She's more fun to be with, and time flies. I can see how my cheeks have turned rosy on the homemade milk and sour cream. They brought her here from the city like a wilted flower, and now she's glowing. We get on well with her, milk the cow together, teddle the hay, and go to the forest for cloudberries. She's a good girl, she's bright. How are you?" Thank God everything ended. Well, I prayed under the pictures that he did not take my granddaughter's father away from her. She is already without a mother. She does not want to be an orphan. Don't just stand there, wash your hands, and sit down at the table. I won't let you go like that. I'll feed you, and you'll take home made presents, milk, sausage, and strawberry jam. Ethan was munching on jacket potatoes and pickled mushrooms and sauerkraut, and he was praising everything. "Oh, what a mother-in-law I have. You're a good woman. Catherine Scott, thank you for everything. I wanted to consult with you. So much has happened in my life this month. I can't stop thinking about it. Listen to everything and tell me how to do the right thing, according to my conscience." And the man told his mother-in-law everything, and that his mother had found him, and about his brother and nephew, and they had a long heart-to-heart talk. Catherine Scott thought, weighed everything, then said, "The fact that you want to adopt a boy is a noble thing. I approve. You just don't rush in like you always do, but take it slow. Let the kids get used to each other, visit the boy first. And as for your mother, don't be angry with her, Ethan. It's her sin to live with, and it's not for you or me to judge. She couldn't have done otherwise to do such a thing. But you did not suffer. She did not give you to an orphanage, but to a good family with money. I remember your parents well. They were wonderful, decent people. You were adored. You were not deprived of love. So what's wrong? If she found you, it means she feels bad. She misses you. Don't push her away. Support her. Try to understand and forgive her and accept everything as it is." Ethan cheered up. "Thank you, Catherine Scott, for your advice, you wise woman, and for a delicious dinner. Well, I'll go with my daughter. It's a long journey." They said a warm goodbye, and Ethan took his daughter home. Susan rejoiced, chirping all the way, amusing her father with stories of her adventures in the village. A couple of days later, Ethan invited Matthew and his grandmother to his house. He was worried how Susan would react to the boy, whether she would be jealous, and the nephew would probably be uncomfortable in someone else's home. The man prepared carefully, bought and cooked a turkey in the oven, and saved gifts and sweets for the children. The baby was a little shy at first, but Susan's cheerfulness quickly got him going. The children became friends and began to do puzzles, and then to race around the house and play spinning. Matthew must have been laughing for the first time since the funeral, and was at least a little oblivious. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. While the children were having fun, the man had a long and quiet conversation with his own mother, who told him how his brother was, how he had grown up, how he had met his first love, and how he was looking forward to the birth of his son. And Ethan showed his mother his childhood photos and photos of his wife, about how bad it was for him without her, how hard it was to raise a daughter alone, no matter how it turned out, but the girl lacked a woman's hand and motherly caress. Toward the end of the evening, the owner of the house decided to delight the children with a surprise. He shouted, "Children, run this way. I have a surprise for you. Here, I'm giving you both roller skates, and I suggest we go to the park on Sunday to learn how to skate." There was a squeal of joy, and Susan and Matthew rushed to unpack the presents. There was no limit to their happiness. Margaret just threw up her hands. "It done. It's such an expensive gift, thank you. You spoil my grandson, and then what will I do with him on my pension? And you don't have to raise Matthew by yourself." "What about me?" "I was thinking, why don't you come and live with me permanently? You don't want to be lonely together, and Susan and I would have more fun. And I'd feel better. I'm away at work. I used to have to do things like hire a nanny for a few hours to keep my daughter home until I got back. And this way you'll look after her. So you think about my offer until the weekend, okay? We're family now, aren't we, Mom? I'm not angry and I'm not offended. We have to move on." The woman was taken aback. "Thank you, son, for the offer. For good." It's embarrassing. "I don't even know. Matthew, grandson, do you want to live with Uncle Ethan and Susan?" The boy nodded his head. "Yes, you can. I like it here. What's Susan now, my little sister?" "That's great." Margaret exhaled a sigh of relief and answered, "All right then, let's try it. If my grandson doesn't mind, and for me it's only happiness to live under one roof with my son and grandson, then you can move us this weekend." Ethan was quietly watching Susan's reaction. She suddenly frowned and pressed her lips together. The man was tense, and I could tell that this was a character adjustment that was yet to come. After all, the daughter was used to all her father's love and time for her, and then some brother showed up, and a grandmother she had never known. But it's done. Ethan is not used to throwing words to the wind, and soon they were all living together. Strangely enough, he and his mother got along just fine, and it seemed that there was a kindred thread between them, however thin and invisible, that bound them together. But the children often fought at first. Susan was very jealous of Matthew's father. Whenever he got his arms around her, she was hysterical, following Ethan around in his tail, not giving him the slightest chance to capture her father's attention. The girl began to divide her toys between yours and the one Daddy gave me, and Matthew was sad again, feeling superfluous, unloved. The situation was heating up, and then Ethan decided to take drastic measures. Susan was a stubborn girl, as it turned out, jealous, but very responsive and honest. Ethan knew this. He could not lie and had never done so. So one day he took both little ones by the hand and said, "Get in the car, both of you. Today will be a sad but very important day for both of us. It's time to grow up. Let's go." He said it so sternly that the children fell silent the whole way. We arrived at the cemetery. The businessman led both children to his wife's grave, and he began, "Look, Matthew, this is where Susan's mother and my wife are buried. Now tell me, daughter, are you happy without your mother? You want her to be there for you, to hold you, to caress you, don't you? Don't you? It's a shame when everyone at school has a mom and you don't, isn't it?" Susan lowered her head. "Yes, Daddy, it's true. Even though I love you so much, more than anyone else in the world, I miss my mommy." Matthew looked at it all silently and with obvious misunderstanding. Ethan waved. "Go back to the car. That's not all. Don't ask anything yet. You'll soon understand everything." And the man took the children to another cemetery. Everyone came out. He led them both to the fresh graves of Sarah and Eddie, strictly said to his daughter, "And here, Susan, is where Matthew's dad and mom are buried. His parents died just a month ago. You have me, and Matthew has no one. You know, and you're being silly and cruel when you throw tantrums and get jealous. Think about how your brother feels. How does he feel? And remember, you're family, and you should always stick together no matter what happens. Support, love, and respect each other. And I love you both equally, and I'll always be there for you. I'm one daddy to both of you now. Do you understand?" Matthew couldn't stand it, and he cried bitterly, remembering his father and mother, and Susan suddenly hugged him tightly and whispered, "I understood everything. I'm sorry, Matthew. I won't do it again. We have everything in common now, and toys and books, and Daddy said he loved us all the same. Don't cry. Here, have some candy. It's actually my favorite, but I'll give it to you. Eat it." Matthew smiled and wiped away his tears, and Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. He actually doubted to the last minute whether the children needed this kind of shock therapy. After all, the children were still young. But this minute he realized that it was all for a good reason. Now they would definitely not fight. The man smiled and asked, "Well, guys, let's say goodbye to our loved ones and let them rest in peace. I suggest we lift our spirits a little and go to the pond to feed the ducks. We'll go for a walk, have some ice cream. Who's in?" The children rejoiced and hurried to leave the cemetery because it was so sad and even scary. Ethan added, "But don't tell Grandma Margaret where we've been. Let's not upset her. Let's keep it a secret for all of us. And about the ice cream too, because somebody had a sore throat recently, didn't they?" 3 of them spent the day walking around, launching paper boats, and Ethan teaching the children how to throw pebbles into the water beautifully. In the evening, they all ate a delicious dinner Margaret had prepared and talked about their adventures. The woman asked quietly, "Ethan, how did you do it? It's like the kids have changed. They've become like family. Where's the jealousy gone? Don't jinx it, don't jinx it, don't jinx it." The businessman laughed. "I just talked to them honestly, and they heard me. They're smart kids, after all." At home, passions had subsided, and Ethan decided to clean up his company. He bought several video cameras and installed them in the deputy's office, in the common smoking room, and in the reception area. The businessman wanted to make sure a nailsmith so that he wouldn't get away with it. No one knew about the cameras, and that was the point. A week went by, and Ethan purposely went to the office on a Saturday when no one was there and started looking at the tapes. And then the hairs on his head just moved. Cian, putting his leg over his leg and lounging imposingly in a chair, was talking on the phone with someone. "Don't shout, don't dust. Everything's gonna be fine. Our lunkhead Ethan doesn't suspect a thing. I'll slip him these papers the other day, and he'll sign them and not blink an eye. He trusts me. He doesn't read too much into it. Do you know how many documents he signs in a day? So 1 document more, 1 less. He won't even notice. As soon as he signs it, it's done." It turns out that the sucker himself signed the sale of his store in the city center for a bargain price. That's it. It's a win. Win for you and a vacation for me. And if anything goes wrong, we'll blame it on the secretary, Leslie. Let's say the woman was stupid for typing in the wrong document. It's not the first time. Emily, the accountant, she did it just fine. It'll work here too, so get your wine glasses ready. Andrew Johnson, you owe me champagne. Ethan came to his senses, and just yesterday he had actually signed a whole pile of papers last night without looking. What a fool. Had he really sold the store without knowing it? The man rushed to the reception, searched everything, but this document was not found. He almost cried in frustration, and then he thought to turn on the video from the reception. Showed Leslie calling Alex, the purchasing manager. "Alex, get over here. It's just like you said. I hid the deed of sale, so you take it out of harm's way. Cian will be here soon, looking for it." Just as Alex took the act and walked out, the deputy came in sharply. "Leslie, is the director in? Did he sign today's papers? Can I have mine?" The girl, as if nothing had happened, replied, "Yes, of course, everything is in the blue folder." Cian went through everything and became furious when he couldn't find the paper he was looking for. He screamed in a voice that wasn't his own, "Leslie, it's not all there. I need 1 document right away. Are you sure you got everything from the signature, or are you just daydreaming as usual?" The girl calmly replied, "No need to yell at me. I took everything I had. If you don't have your document, the director may still be looking at it. Do you want me to ask him? What's the name of the document? But the deputy only muttered, "Don't. He's looking at it. I'll come back on Monday." Ethan exhaled. He even crossed himself. He immediately called Sasha. "I know everything, Alex. Do you have the deed of sale?" "How did you know it was fake?" The guy happily replied, "Because I've been working for you for 10 years. And I know you couldn't have sold the best store in the heart of the capital for 3 kopecks in your right mind. So Leslie and I decided to repossess it. I thought I'd bring it to you on Monday. Then you can decide what to do with it." Ethan was furious. "I've already made up my mind. I think it's time Smith was punished for his shenanigans. It turns out this isn't the first time he's done this. He's caused an innocent man to suffer and die, a child to lose his mother, and he can't help it. And I'd be out in the world by Monday. Oh no. The scoundrel will get what he deserves. And to you, Alex, a special thank you. And you know what? Get ready to be my deputy. I need loyal men like you, and I'll give Leslie a raise. Thank you, guys, from the bottom of my heart." On Monday, Ethan took all his evidence to the prosecutor's office, and the deputy would finally answer to the law. He had been under investigation for a long time, trying to avoid punishment, but the prosecutor's office was not to be trifled with, and the cheeky man had failed. And Sarah's last will was done. Sean got a real sentence. So now he too would get a taste of prisoner's porridge and find out the hard way. After all, in fact, because of Sean, not only Sarah suffered and died, but also his own brother. He'd been so crazy to save his wife, he'd fallen asleep at the wheel. If it were not for all this history, the family would have lived quietly and raised their son. 3 months passed. The family lived amicably, the kids got along and became friends. But naughty kids are naughty kids, and one day their grandmother wasn't looking after them, and the 2 young trackers decided they were old enough to walk home from school on their own. They didn't wait for their grandmother, and tricking the teacher, they went home on their own. On the way, they decided to stop by the pond along the road, in the park, and feed the ducks themselves. They got half a backpack of bread from the school cafeteria beforehand. Susan got so carried away she got too close to the shore. The ground crumbled, and she went tumbling into the water. But it was October, and the water was cold. The girl couldn't swim, so she panicked, floundered, and drowned. Matthew threw off his backpack, took off his jacket, and screamed. "Hang on, little sister," rushed into the water. The boy, unlike his sister, was a good swimmer and managed to pull Susan to shore while people ran in. Passers-by called an ambulance, and the boys were taken to the hospital. Ethan was working quietly when the phone rang. His mother, frightened out of her wits, was screaming into the receiver. "Ethan, trouble came when you weren't expecting it. I came to get the kids, and they were gone. I had time to argue with the teacher. I said, 'How could you let such small children alone?' And she told me they called their father in front of her, saying he was waiting for them on the porch. What can I do?" Ethan chickened out and began to calm his mother down. "Wait, don't shout, let me think." And then another call came, already from the hospital. The man was told that the children had been brought to the children's ward because they had fallen into the pond and almost drowned. The man even felt sick and his heart began to beat a tap. He shouted, "How did they almost drown? Are they all right?" The doctor explained, "Luckily, it was nothing, just hypothermia. But we'll keep them under observation for another 24 hours. Just in case, I'll give you the address. Come and bring all the children's documents." "What are you doing, Daddy? You'd better watch out for your kids," the stern doctor scolded him. Ethan and his mother gathered everything they needed and rushed to the hospital. Ethan wailed, "Well, I'm gonna kick their asses. Both of them. You're kidding, cheating on your teacher, walking out on your own, scaring you. They could have drowned, you brat." Margaret only groaned and held her heart. "Oh." Ethan, tell me about it. I almost had a heart attack myself. I felt sick when everybody came out and they were gone. You do not scold them too much. Well, who was not mischievous as a child? Just as a prophylactic, a little. The man resolutely opened the door to the ward with the most menacing look that did not bode well. Well, seeing what the children were doing thawed his heart. Susan and Matthew were sitting in their pajamas, cuddled under the same blanket, whispering about something. Seeing her formidable father, Susan jumped up bravely. "Daddy, don't scold Matthew. It's all my fault. You punish me." But then her nephew burst out from behind her and started babbling. "Uncle Ethan, I'm a man. So it's my fault. It was my stupid idea to go to the pond. She had nothing to do with it. We're sorry. We were so scared ourselves." Just then Susan, without letting her father get a word in edgewise, said, "You know, Dad, Matthew saved me. I was screaming and drowning, and he dragged me to shore and didn't let me die. So he's my real brother now." Ethan's heart warmed as he saw how friendly the children had become, how much they loved each other, so he changed his mind about scolding them. Instead, he sat down on the bed and put them both on his lap. "God, my grandmother and I were so scared for you. You silly children. Promise me you'll never do that again. And apologize to your teacher. She's going to get in a lot of trouble because of you. Remember, it's not good to lie. You have to listen to adults. And you, Matthew, are a real hero. You were brave enough to jump in the water and save your sister." A pleasant, middle-aged woman, doctor, entered the room, looked sternly out from under her glasses and said, "Ah, there's Daddy here. Come on, let's go have a talk. Will you tell me how you didn't take care of your children?" Susan and Matthew immediately started gabbing at each other. "Clara Fox, don't scold Daddy. He had nothing to do with it. It's not your grandmother's fault either. It's all us. Scold us." The woman smiled involuntarily. What a friendly family, one defending the other. I've never seen anything like it. Ethan listened to the doctor while he couldn't take his eyes off the woman. She was so sweet and charismatic. Though she tried to be stern, her eyes were so kind and radiant you could tell she loved children. All the time she ridiculously corrected a curl, escaping from under a medical cap, and squinted. The doctor asked, "Where is the children's mother? Why didn't she come?" Ethan sighed. "I've been a widower for 7 years. My wife died in childbirth, and I am raising my daughter by myself. And Matthew's not my son. He's my nephew. He lost his parents recently. He's an orphan. Now I want to raise him too. I want to adopt him. Don't think I'm irresponsible. Work takes a lot of time, and my grandmother always comes to pick up the kids. The school is not far away. They are good kids, but today they decided to distinguish themselves. They made a mess of things. Are they all right? The water in the pond is cold." Clara Fox took a very different view of the man. An hour ago she had been indignant. How could you let 7-year-olds go out on the pond alone? Now she marveled. Like that alone. Raising 2 children. Not every woman could do that. And not every man. Besides, she liked Ethan's appearance. Polite, intelligent. Clara Fox had long been divorced. God didn't give her children, and her husband kept reproaching her for it and drinking bitter. The doctor suddenly suggested, "If you want, you can take the children home as an exception. I examined them. They're fine. And tomorrow I'll come to your house. I'll listen to the lungs again, just in case." Ethan smiled. He was crumpled up and didn't want to leave, but he didn't know how to make conversation. So he happily agreed. "Thank you for your understanding, Clara Fox. We'll be waiting for you tomorrow for sure." The next day, Ethan canceled everything, didn't go to work, and spent the day in the kitchen. The kids stayed home too. Clara Fox finally arrived around 3 o'clock. Ethan gibbered and gibbered and gibbered and gibbered. "Good afternoon. Come in, please. And we've just got some roast chicken ready. Why don't you join us for dinner? Oh, you look so beautiful. Clara Fox flushed because no one had complimented her in years. Thank you. I'll take it. Been on my feet all day. Haven't even had a poppy seed in my mouth. So where are my patients? I'm gonna go check on them. Susan and Matthew were pleased with the doctor. They liked the pleasant, smiling woman immediately. She reeked of calmness and kindness. The children appeared to be fine. They all sat down to lunch, and Clara enjoyed eating a delicious roast. Itan, you are so valuable. You raise children, you cook so well, and you have a business. Not a man, but a dream. Margaret smiled softly. The children giggled, and the man blushed. Well, the only thing missing is a hostess and a mother for the kids. Clara Fox, would you like to go for a walk in the park this weekend? We already have a tradition. We all take walks, feed the ducks in the pond. The kids go roller skating. Or are you busy? Clara's heart was about to jump out of her chest, and she answered too hastily. You know, I think I'll do it. It's been a long time since I've been out like this, all work and home, so I'd love to keep you company. Do you mind if I bring my dog? His name's Bert, the poodle. He'd be bored at home alone. The kids squealed happily. Of course, bring Bert. Does he know the commands? We'll take the ball then. The guest left, and Susan suddenly declared with a sly look at her father, Daddy, you should have a look at Aunt Clara. She doesn't have a ring on her finger. Everyone laughed, and Ethan thought, why? Maybe we should take a closer look. I don't want to be alone forever, do I? What if it's destiny?